I've been comparing the exciting new Intellivision space game Star Strike with one of the most popular Atari games, Asteroid. Star Strike has moving images to make the game appear three-dimensional. Asteroids doesn't. And Star Strike features our most exciting visual effect, total destruction of a planet. This is what the other game offers, which is why, after Star Strike, Asteroids left me rather flat. Star Strike, new for Intellivision from Mattel Electronics.
Welcome back to Replay Retro. I'm Matt, and this week we pay tribute to one of the often overlooked heroes of the second generation, a system which dared to face off against the might of the Atari 2600, a system that brought us synthesized speech and made a tentative push towards the future with 16-bit technology. And we ask, did Mattel's Intellivision make the grade? At the dawn of the 1980s, Atari were unchallenged in the home console market, having pushed Fairchild's Channel F console aside with ease. But toy conglomerate Mattel were not about to let this young company dominate a potentially lucrative new toy market, and set about developing their own console under the name Intelligent Television. The system promised to feature a faster 16-bit processor and much more RAM, advertising capabilities far beyond that of Atari's console. Their experience of marketing also led them to set the system up as being closer to a computer too, promising that a keyboard module set for a 1981 release would allow education and accounting programs, making the Intellivision the obvious choice for the family over Atari's one-trick pony. But while Mattel could certainly talk the talk, their production team weren't quite capable of walking the walk. And while the US saw the core system retail for $269 in 1980, it would be another 2 years before Europe got to taste 16-bit gaming, and Japan had to rely on Bandai for their version. The promised expansions, which would help the system appeal to a more mature audience, were repeatedly delayed, and many were scrapped altogether. Eventually, Mattel managed to come up with their promised computer add-on, but couldn't bring down production costs enough to make its release worthwhile. And so they went back to the drawing board, even prompting an investigation from consumer watchdogs for fraud and false advertising, who eventually went as far as imposing fines on Mattel until they released their promised expansion in 1983, albeit in a very different form, using a primitive operating system, no secondary CPU, and only 2K of RAM, as opposed to the promised 64K boost. Around the same time, Mattel also released the IntelliVoice module, bringing speech synthesis to games, as well as a piano keyboard expansion, and the cheaper Intellivision 2, which was able to play Atari 2600 games, thanks to its clever little system changer. As a games console, the Intellivision was a very competent system, with games like Star Strike showcasing its pseudo 3D capabilities compared to the mostly flat library of games on the 2600. However, Mattel lacked the in-house creativity of Atari, as well as the arcade back catalogue, and it would be 1983 before any third parties put their talent to work producing games for the Intellivision, leaving it with a limited software library. This no doubt impacted console sales, which in turn made the system even less attractive a proposition for third-party developers in an unfortunate downward spiral. To combat the lack of games, Mattel decided to focus on things the Atari couldn't do, and so looked to their unique 16-button controller with thumbpad, hoping to use the extra buttons to create more involving games such as RPGs and adventure titles. However, people found the leap from single-button joystick to this complex layout too much to cope with, and even with the help of individual overlays customizing the controller for each and every game, the average user still couldn't quite get to grips with this awkward layout. Similar bad layouts would be seen again in the future with Atari's 5200, Atari's Jaguar, and the ColecoVision, each using phone-style keypads and often using overlays. Next, Mattel looked to the lucrative sports market, using the powerful console to create vastly superior and much more realistic-looking licensed sports titles such as NBA's basketball and NHL's hockey. The use of well-known sports journalist George Plimpton to advertise the console and these sports games added weight and credibility, finally giving the Intellivision a visible advantage in the eyes of consumers and attracting the interest of developers like Imagic with Demon Attack and Parker with their fantastic conversion of The Empire Strikes Back. This renewed strength gave sales the right push, and the console sold 3 million units by mid-1984. Sadly, however, those sales would be the Intellivision's last, as the video game crash was right around the corner, and when Mattel posted a loss, the Intellivision became the first blood of this crash, and was abandoned forever, with sales only a tenth of those which the Atari 2600 would go on to achieve during its phenomenal lifespan. But now, let's take a look at the system itself and a few of those incredible games. So here it is, the rather large, as you can see, Mattel Electronics Intellivision Intelligent Television. It's a very sleek unit, as you can see. More of that wood panelling that we're starting to see on all our 70s and 80s hardware, designed to fit in with those lovely decoration styles of homes from around that time. Along with some metal working along the top. You've got 2 buttons on the actual console itself. That's your power switch and your reset button. And then the controllers themselves, as you can see, slot into the console. That's top and bottom here. And as you can see, these are hardwired into the console, which to me, hardwiring anything is a bad idea. Because if I break this controller, if I do any damage to the buttons or I break the wire, I can't replace that. And also that means that Mattel can't sell me a new controller, a Pro controller or something like that. It's bad planning, I think, on their behalf. And I think it would have been much better to make this removable. And indeed, on the Intellivision 2, they did upgrade to removable controllers. The controllers, I believe, used a standard 9-pin control plug, and you could swap them out nice and easily. Looking at the layout for the controller, we see our telephone style button pads here. We have fire buttons on the sides and our directional thumb pad here, which can also be used as a spinner control. Very good. Very lightweight, these controls, I will give them that. Probably the lightest weight controllers I've felt. And for a modern gamer, actually having this many buttons, as much as the layout isn't very good, we're used to it, so it's not that bad. Depending on the game, I can work out ways to hold this controller that work quite well. But compared with the 2600's simple controller, this must have looked impossible. It's a ridiculous concept. But there you go, it's one of those things that we actually see several times during video game history, is the war of who can fit the most buttons on their controller. For example, in Nintendo Entertainment System, we saw 2 buttons. Sega, when they launched the Mega Drive, they upped that to 3 buttons. So the SNES upped that to 4 buttons. For some reason, buttons are always seen as a good thing to add, but in this case, less is definitely more. Just sliding that back away for a moment, and looking at the front of the console, we can see nothing worthwhile there, nothing really on the bottom. Side again is blank, and the back here we see, if your camera can make that out, a socket for a relatively standard plug lead. Now, this console has an internal power supply, which obviously makes it quite heavy, but it's odd that they would choose to hardwire the controllers, yet give us the opportunity to use any power cable and any television cable we see fit. It's just a very bizarre situation, a very odd idea. At the other side, you see this great big hole there, which is the system's cartridge port. So looking at the cartridges, they come in nice cardboard cases like this with a fun image on the front, which of course looks nothing like the game. Just notice there, the police officer there appears to know he's landed in mud, he's not bleeding. I was thinking this is a lot more violent than I had originally thought. On the back you get a screenshot and a little description of the games. I'm sure you can work out already that this game is very much Pac-Man. Although it's actually a very good game, I like this. When you open it up, you find your cartridge, which we will now just slot into the side of the Intellivision here. Give it a shove. There we go. That's nice and firm. You also get your instruction manual so that you can play this thrilling 70s, 80s game. And you will get 2 controller overlays. Controller overlays look like this. This one, again, like many things in my collection, is very chewed up. And they simply slot into the controllers like this. There we go. And now your buttons on the pad have meaning. So these buttons are 1, 2, or red, green and blue. You have side buttons here for locking doors. Make that out. And it reminds you that you control the direction of your character using this pad here. So now the controller starts to make more sense, because we realise that all these buttons here, these 8 buttons that have no action assigned to them, aren't relevant for this game. So this game, in fact, only uses the D-pad, the side buttons, these top 3 buttons, and of course the enter key. So now the controller starts to make more sense, thanks to the overlays. But anyway, with your overlay in, your cartridge inserted, and the switch flicked to the on position, you're ready to play Lock and Chase on the Intellivision. We select our difficulty by picking a coloured spot on the keypad. And our number of players the same way, that's 1 player. And then press enter. Get this brief musical interlude. And then we are released into the maze, and the door will lock behind us. I have to forgive my gameplay here, this keypad is a little bit battered. You can see it's very Pac-Man. It's a little bit more similar though, in theme at least, to Clean Sweep on the Vectrex, which was obviously a game based on stealing money from a bank. Those red lines that you can see I've just dropped are doors that I am able to lock within the bank. So you can lock doors so that the police can get stuck behind them. And as you can see, that one on the top left is now fading away because that door is now going to unlock. The green doors that you can see are automatic doors, so they will open and close themselves. And that one there, closing in front of me, stopped me getting the bonus item. That dollar sign you can see is, essentially, it's the fruit from Pac-Man. There you go, I've used that door to block the police. Oh, yeah. Have I done something special? Can I eat the police now? I don't think so. I think it briefly pauses them, perhaps. I can get trapped behind my own doors, which is an important fact to remember when playing this, just as much as the police can. So while it is useful for me to close doors on them like that to stop them coming after me, it can backfire as well. I'm really gonna... There we go, that helped. And those green doors are very bad at getting in the way. As you can see on the left and right of the screen, there are tunnels, just like in Pac-Man, for me to move from one side of the screen to the other easily. There you go, that automatic door just saved me there. It blocked a police officer from getting to me. Ooh, narrow escape. Can I get these last 2 beads? Music is very repetitive and annoying. This little beeping sound is quite annoying. Oh, last 2. And the doors now unlock, so I can now escape from the vault. So it doesn't just automatically take you to the next level like it would in Pac-Man. You actually have to reach the exit. And there we go. That is Lock and Chase on the Intellivision. Next up we have Tank Battle. Select the speed again. This is a 2-player game. You cannot play against the computer. But I'm just trying to demo it here. Each player has 2 tanks. You can see there's 2 blue tanks and 2 black tanks. And your objective is to neutralise the enemy tanks. You have forward controls. Incredibly awkward, clumsy steering controls, I find. You then, of course, have your main gun, as you would expect. Did that not hit? No, you're turning the wrong way. You can also lay mines, I think. This button here, does that lay a mine? Uh-oh. How do I get out of there? No, I'll use the blue tank. I'll come and get him. Ah, I think I blew myself up there with my own mine. You can switch tanks, you don't have to stay with the same tank constantly. And you do that by pressing the star on the keypad. There you go, and you're now in charge of the other tank. Don't seem to be able to fire while moving, unless that's just me. It's basically a version of the two-player tanks game on the combat cartridge. I do like the way that when you hit an enemy tank, it moves as if it has actually been hit. I don't like, however, the steering, although that may just be the fact that my control pads are a little bit past it. Can I go straight through the screen, or do you get stuck at the edge of the screen? Can't go straight through. Let's lay a mine. Can I back in? You get the idea. It's a nice, simple, two-player battle game, which I'm sure if you had two working controllers, well, two perfectly working controllers anyway, and two people playing against each other, this would be a very addictive and solid game. The addition of mines is something that we don't see in the Atari 2600 combat cartridge. Also, your ability to control two tanks at once adds a new tactical dimension, because you need to be looking after both of those tanks and manoeuvring them away from each other while still trying to get at your enemy. All in all, a good version of the game, but unfortunately the poor control pad, well, the poor directional pad of the Intellivision, with its overcomplicated press, spin and all kinds of functionality to it, just ruins the game for me. It really lets it down. Last up then, we have one of the Intellivision's more complicated games. This is Space Battle. I say it's complicated because look at the controller overlay. What the hell? I've been trying to figure this game out now for a little while, and I don't really have the knack of it. But let's get in there anyway. From what I can understand, this is some kind of tactical screen. These groups around here are aliens, while these groups in the middle are my fighter squadrons that I'm sending out against the aliens. And essentially, once I've sent them on their way, so I've sent those three squadrons in different directions now, somehow, just by mashing the keypad, they will eventually meet an alien squadron, and I'll have the option to go to battle. So that looks like it's going to happen over here now. There we go, something's happened. Go to battle. But maybe I think, however, yeah, the aliens are far more manoeuvrable than I am. See if I can. Yeah, killed one of you, you little alien. No, red thing bad. Red thing is bad. I believe you get 3 ships each time. The hell did I do then? So there you go, my squadron has been defeated there, but another squadron is now ready for battle. I really don't... No! Red thing bad! I really don't get this game, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't really understand the point of that battle screen thing though. Unless there's some deep tactic I'm not being very attentive of. I can't even neutralise them enemy weapons. Once they fire, you've had it. Does any of these buttons do anything? So there you go, that's Space Battle. A really, really complicated game that I just can't seem to get the knack of for the life of me. I'm sure someone right now is sat at home watching their screen and screaming at me to play this game correctly. After the video game crash, Mattel decided it was time to leave the video game hardware market to someone else. And while they did return in 1986 to help Nintendo bring the Famicom to Western markets, it wasn't until 2006 that they would release their own console, the Mattel Hyperscan, leaving the toy giant's biggest push into the video game market a faded chapter in the history of the second generation. That's all we've got time for on this week's show, but don't forget to join us again next time. Until then, you can keep in touch via the Replay Retro Twitter page, and don't forget to show that like button some love if you enjoy what we do. See you again next time.